For more than 20 years, Hollywood did everything it could to avoid the way superheroes actually look in the comics. Bright colors were muted, spandex was treated like a joke, and some of the most iconic costumes in pop culture were either redesigned beyond recognition or buried beneath black leather and tactical armor. From the X-Men openly mocking yellow spandex, to Batman becoming a walking military prototype, to Superman's colors being drained of their life, the industry wasn't just changing these characters, it was actively running from something. Even as audiences kept proving they wanted the comics on screen, Hollywood kept insisting it knew better. So how did we get here? Why did this fear take hold for so long, and what finally forced the industry to change? To find out, let's dive in and take a look at why Hollywood is afraid of comic-accurate costumes. Hollywood has a long, messy, and often frustrating history with comic book accuracy. For decades, studios treated the source material like something to be ashamed of, muting colors, redesigning costumes, and stripping away anything that looked too comic booky, all out of fear that audiences wouldn't take it seriously. The X-Men are one of the best examples of this. At the time, Marvel had never delivered a true, undeniable blockbuster. Blade had been a success, but it wasn't even marketed as a comic book movie. It was positioned as a gritty vampire action film. So when Fox began developing X-Men, executives were deeply nervous about how audiences would react to something that featured superheroes with an assortment of powers dressed in bright yellow, blue, and red costumes. Their fear was amplified by what had just happened to DC. Batman and Robin had leaned hard into the exaggerated, colorful, and absurd side of comic books, and it crashed and burned. But rather than recognizing that the film failed because it was simply a bad movie, studios took the wrong lesson from its failure. The industry's takeaway became anything that felt too closely tied to comic books was box office poison. That anxiety collided with the broader cultural perception of comics in the 90s. While creators had been pushing darker, more mature storytelling since the 80s, with graphic novels like Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns, the public still largely viewed comic books as content for kids. But X-Men wasn't being made for kids. It was positioned as a grounded, political, social commentary for grown-ups. So Fox made a deliberate choice to run from the source material visually, worried that costumes made of colorful spandex wouldn't be taken seriously. As a result, the X-Men suits were redesigned in sleek black leather, inspired heavily by the success of The Matrix. Bryan Singer later argued that durable black leather made more practical sense as protective gear, while producer Lauren Schuler-Donner added that the darker look helped the team blend into the night. And to blunt the inevitable backlash from fans, Singer even acknowledged the controversy inside the movie itself, adding Cyclops' now famous line, "What would you prefer, yellow spandex?" in an effort to illustrate how ridiculous the team would look in them. Christopher Nolan took this a step further when it came to his adaptation of Batman. His pitch for the film was, what if Batman existed in the real world? As a result, Nolan would develop real-world justifications for every element of Batman's design, from his armor and vehicles to his gadgets and surveillance tech. The cape became memory cloth developed by Wayne Enterprises, the Batsuit itself was reimagined as a no-mech survival suit designed for advanced infantry, and the Tumbler was a retired, bridge-jumping combat vehicle. Even Ra's al Ghul was stripped of his supernatural roots. No longer an immortal being sustained by magic, but a mantle passed down from one man to another to maintain the illusion of immortality. Even the Lazarus Pit, famous in the comics for healing injuries, resurrecting the dead, and even granting immortality, was reimagined as a brutal prison, a symbolic pit Bruce climbs out of after he's assumed dead, healed from his injuries. Time and time again, Nolan took concepts that were once overtly comic book and rebuilt them as psychological, physical, and technological elements that could plausibly exist in the real world, and the industry took note. Almost overnight, Nolan's grounded realism became the new gold standard. Fantastic Four 2015, for example, was pitched not as a colorful superhero adventure, but as a grounded sci-fi horror film, one that aimed to explore the brutal, real-world consequences of ordinary people suddenly gaining superhero abilities, and the terrifying physical transformations that would come with it. The team suits abandoned the bold blue color scheme and the iconic Four logo entirely. Instead, they were redesigned as plain black containment suits, built specifically to regulate and stabilize each character's mutation. Johnny's suit was constructed from fire-resistant materials to withstand combustion, Sue's was made from adaptive fabric that could turn invisible with her body, and Reed's was engineered to physically maintain the integrity of his form. For the Dark Knight, the Batsuit was redesigned and stripped down to be lighter and more flexible, resembling tactical armor, which became the new standard. When X-Men Days of Future Past arrived, the black leather of the early 2000s would be replaced replaced with full battle armor, layered plates, dark blues and grays, and muted finishes that felt taken right out of a war zone rather than a comic panel. Even when studios slowly started inching back toward comic accuracy, they did so with one hand firmly on the brake. Superman, the brightest and most hopeful icon in the genre, saw the reds and blues of his costume muted in Superman Returns, with a red swapped for maroon, the same shade of red as the evil Superman in Superman 3, while Man of Steel pushed even further, desaturating his suit and also making it a Kryptonian house outfit rather than knitted by Ma Kent out of the blanket he arrived in. For their part, Marvel, once they began self-producing their own films, tried to go the other way, embracing the comics and dressing most of its characters in brighter, more comic-accurate designs. But there were still hesitations. Jon Favreau initially wanted the Mandarin to be the primary villain of Iron Man, but worried that his mystical rings and overt supernatural elements would clash too harshly with Iron Man's grounded, tech-based origin. That fear lingered across the early MCU. Daredevil, when he finally appeared on screen, was outfitted not in bright red spandex, but in tactical body armor that looked more at home in a SWAT unit than a comic panel. Hawkeye underwent a similar transformation, his iconic purple color scheme stripped away in favor of black leather and military utility gear that emphasized function over identity. Even Quicksilver, when he finally appeared in Age of Ultron, was stripped of his classic comic book look, ditching the blue suit and lightning bolt in favor of a muted, utilitarian design that felt more like athletic wear than a superhero costume. Over the years, Marvel has walked a careful tightrope, delivering wildly comic-accurate designs for some characters while deliberately grounding and redesigning others. In one corner, you get bold, faithful suits that feel ripped straight out of the page, and in the other, restrained, tactical interpretations meant to feel safe and realistic. Deadpool, however, proved that a fully comic-accurate suit could not only work, but become iconic overnight, with its bright red and expressive white eyes. But even more importantly, the film embraced the tone of the comics just as openly. By breaking the fourth wall, Deadpool didn't try to hide how ridiculous a man in a red suit talking to the audience really was, he weaponized it. The costume worked because the movie invited the audience in on the joke, instead of apologizing for it. That attitude was right there in the marketing too. In one of the early trailers, Deadpool takes so long suiting up that he completely misses the chance to save a man being attacked, arriving too late, fully dressed in his perfect comic-accurate costume, only to find the moment has passed. It wasn't just a joke, it was a statement. The film wasn't afraid to show the costume, laugh with the audience about the absurdity of it, and still treat it as iconic instead of something to hide. At the same time, Tom Holland's first Spider-Man costume leaned hard into the character's Silver Age roots, embracing the bright reds and blues, oversized and expressive white eyes, and classic youthful energy of the 1960s cartoon design, a look fans instantly embraced. And to be fair, this approach had never completely disappeared. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films had stayed remarkably comic accurate this entire time, largely because Raimi himself was a lifelong Silver Age fan. In fact, this is why Raimi initially opposed featuring Venom in the third film, because the character wasn't from Spider-Man's Silver Age, and he didn't think he would fit. When Spider-Man was given a new costume in The Amazing Spider-Man, a homemade utilitarian design, clearly influenced by Nolan's grounded Batman approach, fans rejected it almost immediately, leading the sequel to retreat back to something far more familiar and comic accurate. Into the Spider-Verse pushed that idea even further, fully embracing stylized animation, half-tone printing effects, exaggerated proportions, and bold comic book color in a way Hollywood had largely avoided for decades. Instead of running from the source material, it celebrated it, and audiences responded immediately. After spending more than 2 decades buried beneath black leather, tactical redesigns, and muted palettes, Deadpool and Wolverine finally put Hugh Jackman in the classic yellow and blue suit that studios once treated as a punchline. Director Sean Levy revealed that bringing back the yellow and blue suit was non-negotiable and something Ryan Reynolds pushed for immediately, with the actor saying, "You don't bring back Wolverine unless he's in the suit." However, Hugh Jackman wasn't convinced, admitting he worried the suit might not work in live action. But the moment he stepped onto the set in it, standing beside Deadpool in full costume, everything changed. The crew, made up of veterans who'd seen everything, fell completely silent, while some of them, grown men, openly cried. Reynolds later said he had never witnessed a reaction like that before in his entire career, while Jackman would go on to say that once he finally saw the suit in action, he couldn't believe it hadn't been used in any of his previous appearances as Wolverine, finally admitting he was wrong. The costume Hollywood spent 20 years running from didn't fail when it was finally embraced. It soared, and in doing so, it proved what fans had understood all along. Comic accuracy was never the problem. It was Hollywood's fear of it that held everything back. And when it came time to reboot the Fantastic Four and Superman, they followed suit, dressing the heroes in bright, comic-accurate designs. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of Hollywood's untold stories and unmade movies.